evening, everybody, and welcome to Dad Bods, Crab Cakes, and Sports, where husky middle-aged men show insights on the latest Baltimore sports news from the bank to the yard and beyond. We're breaking down the Ravens, Orioles, Terps, and more. I'm here tonight with Mike Frisky. If you guys have noticed, it's just two of us tonight, Mike. No John tonight.
Yep. It's quiet in the studio. I just got to do a mic. Every time I do a mic check, I'm checking my new mic out today. Also, that's my name. But it looks kind of cool, and I hope the audio is a little bit better for you guys moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds good on this end. Last week you had a little twinge to it, a little sound in the background, but that's okay. So I guess John's on what do we say? John's on assignment. I mean, tonight. That's why he can't make it. No,
he's doing something that car salesmen do. I don't know exactly.
What's that company he works for? Do we cheat him and how? One of those car sales places. Oh my goodness! Yeah, and also he owes the wife a dinner out for Valentine's Day. So no judgment here on that. But
no, I understand.
Yeah, it looks like you survived the Valentine's Day weekend.
Yeah, I dropped a little reel on the this is a shameless plug on the Dad Bod Crab Cakes and Sports Facebook page of my wife and I and our adventure in charcuterie. Am I saying that right still? Charcuterie?
Charcuterie. You got it. Well done.
I know more about meat and cheese than I did a week ago today. I know how to slice meat and cheese and fold it, and I always knew how to eat it, but I feel more cultured, I think. But I don't know that that's going to be on the regular for me.
Oh, it's so delicious, though. Charcuterie is great. It's a fancy word for meats, cheeses, and crackers with the occasional fruit.
Yeah, and it was delicious. We waited too late, and it was 8 o'clock, and we wanted to make it look nice, and then we didn't eat any of it. We're starving, but we can't. We want to show the kids, so we brought it home in a box, and we ended up going out to a local establishment and having a pretzel and a beverage, and then heading home.
Look at you.
So it was a good Valentine's Day. Yeah, it was good.
Outstanding. Yes, as I said last week, the wife got the gifts and breakfast on Valentine's Day, and then I went, as mentioned, to softball in the evening and did play the softball.
How'd you do?
Did fine. I am 42 years old, and I'm playing with all 20-year-olds. So it's quite interesting. Your boy still got it. That's what I got to say.
You can't steal bases in slow pitch softball, right, Jay? Because that's what you did in high school.
Yeah, I can't do it now. We're just station to station, trying not to pull hamstrings and quads. We're good. But no, I mean, it was a good weekend. Then we did a little brunch yesterday, so we made up for it. Not a big deal at all.
Yeah, and I saw a picture you posted of daddy-daughter dance. So that looked like it was fun.
Yep, daddy-daughter dance, always good. It's funny because all the little ones at the daddy-daughter, my daughter's obviously 11 and 6th grade now in middle school. And all the little ones are on stage dancing and running around. And that's what my daughter did when she was 3, 4, 5 years old. So it's slowly getting to the point where I went to, when Ashanti graduated from high school, we did 4 daddy-daughter dances. So I've got an evolution of all of it, from little all the way up.
Oh, it definitely changes. I think they start to be a little bit too cool to sprint around in circles, chasing balloons and stuff. So they're now at the age where they're boys, maybe even. It's kind of scary, Jay.
Oh my gosh, dude, no. No, I've already been through it with the oldest. I mean, it's not as bad as you would, but it's got its moments. It's got its moments. Just get I don't know, get a good gun locker. That's all I'm going to say, Mike.
It's like a country music song.
That's right. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, I guess we should get into it. We got a lot to talk about tonight. First things first here. Who I don't think had a very good Valentine's Day or a good weekend is Justin Tucker.
News broke. I think there are seven more accusers in the massage therapy industry So Justin, is already facing a whole bunch of accusers. And now just to add that on top, I think we had spoken previously, it wasn't looking good anyway. And now you add more on top of it. It's something doesn't smell right. When there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing. And the Orioles, the Ravens don't play around, like you said, when it comes to these types of situations. So I really don't see a way that he comes out of this as a Raven next fall. Do you see anything differently, Jason?
No, not at all. I mean, I don't. Not only is he not a Raven, I mean, he might not play football again. To me, it's even a bigger thing. I mean, you're right. When there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, what is the total now? I mean, the total's now, it's got to be what, about 15? Is that what that's an awful lot of accusations for there not to be truth in there somewhere, if not every time.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think the original was 6, and then it went to 9 by February 1st. So we're at least at 12. And I think the biggest thing for me, if you're a professional athlete, you probably have a massage therapist, for therapeutic massage for athletics that you would go to regularly. I just don't see a reason why you would go to all these different places unless you were like out of town in a different area, traveling, with your team to another team's therapist or something like that. I don't know how that exactly works, but there's just too many different players involved here. Something just doesn't seem right.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, and unfortunately it sounds very similar to the Deshaun Watson situation in Cleveland. And I mean, I think, in my opinion, this was Justin Tucker played his last game as a Baltimore Raven.
Absolutely. I think the other thing, if you've ever gone to a physical therapist, massage therapist, anything like that, I mean, you might try a couple till you find one that you like, but right after that, at that point, I'm going to the same person every time unless there's an extenuating circumstance. So that to me is a red flag.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know what else to say other than it's a shame. I mean, he was a Hall of Fame. I don't want to say was, because he could still get elected into the Hall of Fame, but man, I don't know. I mean, he was a Hall of Fame kicker, maybe not first ballot. I don't know how that works with kickers. Obviously, there's not many in there, but I don't know if that's going to be the case anymore, and it's just a shame. But I mean, we can pivot. The other thing that right after we went off the air last week, there were some really key MLB signings, some free agent signings. We had Alex Bregman to Boston, and then Nick Pivetta to the Padres, and also the latest one was Kenley Jansen to the Angels. So three pretty big signings right off the bat. I mean, that kind of wraps up who was left in the free agent pool. I mean, as far as hitters go, I mean, Bregman to me was one of the biggest pieces going into free agency, and he kind of lasted the longest. But him going to the Red Sox for, 3 years, $120 million. The Red Sox really just put themselves back up towards contender in the top of the East. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, that's quite a signing. I mean, if you're a Red Sox fan, you have to be super excited this week that you just got a bat that's a middle of the lineup bat and a Gold Glove caliber third baseman. I know Alex Cora said he wasn't sure exactly where he's going to play yet. But either way, I think if you slide him to second base, he's still. I mean, that transition usually is pretty easy for someone who can play third base at that level. Or Devers slides into a DH role. I don't know exactly where that goes, but $40 million is a steep price tag. I think if you look at average annual value, I was looking at Spot Track, but Bregman, I think, is a top 5 position player now going into next season. Aaron Judge makes 40, Soto's at 51, Shohei's making 70. Which is out of this world. That's twice what Mike Trout's making next year. That's crazy. And then some of these other contracts, were a few years ago. You have Lindor making 34, Carlos Correa making 33. But so that, as much as it seems like a lot, it's kind of the inflation that goes when, as years go by. Now what was 33 million maybe 5 years ago is a $40 million player now. But what you look at now with the Red Sox is a formidable lineup where I wasn't quite as concerned with them as an Orioles fan last year, watching our pitching staff you could kind of pitch around some of their best bats and not be too concerned about the rest of the lineup. Devers was a strong player. Casas is coming on, but a lot of their lineup was pretty weak overall. Now it's a lot deeper. Their pitching staff's a lot stronger with Crochet. We talked about that last week. Crochet, and if Walker Buehler can bounce back. So the Red Sox went from maybe beginning the offseason as the third or fourth or fifth best team to, I think, a contender for the AL East title.
Yeah, for sure. With like Bregman, after all those names you just mentioned, I think Bregman's a great player, but I would rather have all of those other players at $40 million, except for Carlos Correa, than Alex Bregman. So that's an awful lot of money. When I think of those other guys, I'm thinking, those are MVP candidates. I don't think of Alex Bregman as an MVP candidate. Now, do I think he could hit 40 home runs in Fenway? Absolutely. That might be a stretch, but it's definitely a possibility with that short porch out there. But the bigger questions to me now from Boston is, what are they going to do with Devers? How healthy is Devers? He's off of those 2 shoulder surgeries that he had. Is he maybe not going to start the season? Is this an insurance policy? He's got, or maybe they move him over to first and they're done with Casas. I know that with him, they were a little frustrated with him and his maturing as a player, but I'm not sure exactly what direction they want to go. They have some good young talent coming up too. Roman Anthony, I believe, is one of the guys that is one of the top prospects in baseball, and he's ready. He's got a shot at making this roster. So, yeah, Boston is absolutely – this made them very formidable, a lot more than they were last week. And another team that, just quietly made a good move, I think, was San Diego, bringing on Pivetta to be, their third or fourth starter. To me, it kind of bumped those other guys out that were kind of like fringe starters. So, 32 years old to a backloaded contract. That's a pretty good deal as far as I'm concerned. What do you think?
I think the way they structured the contract was very interesting. And for a team in San Diego that's I'm calorie strapped. They're salary strapped. Anyway, that's how we have a dad bod.
There you go. Well done.
Yeah, right. So salary strapped like they are. I think they have him for $1 million this year. That looks genius at this moment. And then it's 19, 14, and 18 million over the next 3 after that. To navigate their payroll constraints that they have at this moment. Smart signing. It also gives them the flexibility. We've talked at length about potentially a trade out of their starting rotation. They have a couple guys on their last year in Michael King and Dylan Cease. So what it really does, it gives them some flexibility and some depth in their rotation. Last year, they did a good job of competing with LA, the Dodgers, and I think it's hard. It's like when the Orioles competed with the Yankees when they were the evil empire there for a while and were just spending millions and millions and millions in the AL East. That's what the Padres are dealing with in the NL West. So they have to do enough every year to compete at least at a decent level. Usually they'll finish second, get a wild card, and then have a chance in the postseason. Anything they can do to upgrade their pitching staff, I think, is a plus for them. So Pivetta, a veteran signing, I think just gives them roster flexibility.
Yeah, if you look at if you listen to what the Dodgers had to say last year, they said the team they were terrified of that gave them the toughest time were the San Diego Padres. And for them to now add another weapon, but you're right this could have a lot to do with the family situation out with the ownership in San Diego, not knowing who they're going to keep, where the money's come from. There's a big fight over inheritance and what they're going to do. I mean, they could start selling everybody off, but beyond that, and just sticking it to it as far as baseball goes, I mean, that's a World Series contender out there. I don't know if I would be looking to shop some of these guys unless they're not going to sign them. If they can't sign them, but I do think they're going to be in it. I mean, all year long if they go with who they have now. So not real sure as far as what they want to do out there. It's a little confusing.
Yeah, I think the other thing, it's interesting. I know Pivetta kind of had an up and down career, and last year I think he pitched really, really well at a very hitter-friendly ballpark in Fenway. And I think that Petco, or whatever it's called now, is definitely shaded more towards pitchers. So another potential boon there for the Padres.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely interested in the Orioles going after Nick Pivetta, but that is not here nor there. So the last guy, the latest signing was Kenley Jansen going to Anaheim to essentially take over that, or I say Anaheim, to LA to take over the Angels closer job. It's to me, I mean, he's still putting up solid numbers. I mean, it gives him another year to go after the closing record to add a little bit more to an already more than likely Hall of Fame career. I don't think that the Angels are going to be a super competitive team this year, but just to have someone to lock down the back end of the bullpen, and it didn't cost a whole lot of money for him. So to me, it wasn't that big of a deal for them to bring him on. I think it's actually a pretty good move.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think every team needs elite arms in the back end of their bullpen, hard throwers. And say what you will about Kenley Jansen at this point in his career, he still throws hard. He's 36 years old and still can throw really hard. I mean, I think look at what the Orioles have in Dominguez. It's just a hard thrower. Sometimes you can miss bats just being that strong. Jansen, I don't know what the Angels' plan is. Mike Trout's been there forever. They've tried to build around him in several different ways. Really haven't been able to come up with a World Series contending team out there. I think it's a fine back-end move. I think I look at everything in two different lenses. I say, hey, would that have helped the Orioles if that guy would have signed here? And then I think, hey, is that a good signing for that team? Right. Sure, I think it's a fine signing for LA. Is it a difference-making signing? I'm not sure. Had he come here, I think I'd feel good about it because, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, there's a little bit of a question mark with Felix coming back as our closer. I know that Mike Elias said that he should be good to go probably for opening day, but they have to kind of work him back maybe with kid gloves a little bit. But it's nice to have an insurance policy, right? That's kind of what they had in Craig Kimbrell, and then they brought in Sir Anthony at midseason last year. That was kind of the idea, I think, behind that. But to have somebody else who is comfortable in a closer role would have been really good here, I think, to start the season, just in case.
Right. And with Kenley Jansen, though, if he's healthy all year long, by August, he's not an Angel. He's going to one of these contenders that want to shore up their bullpen. And, I mean, that's another reason why you sign a guy like that right now, because you can get something from some of these contenders later on in the year. And I think that had to be on their mind as well as one of those possibilities. So speaking of contenders and whatnot, I guess we could just roll right in. Mike, do you have a way too early World Series prediction on who you think will be playing in the Fall Classic?
Oh, boy. I wasn't ready for that.
I know. I'm going to throw that one right at you. Big curveball.
Why don't you go since you're clearly ready, and then I'll come back with you.
Ooh, I was thinking about this earlier, and right now, I'm gonna go with the Dodgers. I'm not gonna say they're gonna win, but I'm gonna go with the Dodgers out of the NL, and I'm gonna go with the Texas Rangers out of the American League.
Interesting
to get back. But
tell me why. Why the Rangers, Jason?
Well, Bruce Bochy's their manager, and when he was in San Francisco, it was every other year. Every other year they made it to the World Series. They'd have a year
Even
off.
years. Yep.
But really, no, I think last year they dealt with a ton of injuries. They dealt with a lot from their pitching staff, and their lineup was never the same guy 2-3 nights in a row, it felt like. I do feel like they mashed their way to the World Series a couple years ago. Some of those guys with Seager and Simeon and Garcia, and then the young guys, Langford. I think they're in a pretty good shape with the West being wide open as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I don't think the Astros have done anything really to just catapult themselves up there. I think it'll be a competitive division, but I think the Rangers come out of the West and they come out of the American League as well.
It's hard to argue, especially with the Dodgers, right? I think they clearly have the best roster in Major League Baseball. They're constructed. I told you a couple weeks ago that they did an article where they separated their team in half, and each team was still a playoff team. I think it's just amazing the depth that they have in their rotation and in their lineup. So I think year in, year out, it's the same. It's been the same contenders for the last 5-6 years. It's going to be the Dodgers. It's going to be the Phillies, probably, maybe Atlanta. Banging on the door. The Mets, I'm curious how they'll bounce back this year, and can they repeat a little bit what they did last year? I'm curious. So let's just go outside the box and say New York Mets and Boston Red Sox. Was that 1986? I think it was. Is that a rematch from 1986? I like the Red Sox to best the Yankees in the ALCS just because I love to see the Yankees lose. And I think we talked last episode about their pitching staff, and I think you might have convinced me that they're going to be pretty good. And I like Crochet and Bueller, and I like their young guys to bounce back and learn a little bit from last year in Hawk and Cutter Crawford and those kind of guys to really be consistent game in, game out to win series. And then as far as their lineup is concerned, the Bregman thing to me is what I kind of wish the Orioles would have done. It's just got a bona fide veteran player. I know we talked about there not being a lot of space in Baltimore position player wise to do that, but sometimes you got to replace somebody you got with somebody else, like just to bring a different element to the team. And to have somebody in the playoffs like Alex Bregman, who's been there. Now they banged trash cans once or twice, but who's been there and been successful. He can get on base 36% of the time, 38% of the time, and just know when you're in that tough series in a LCS, and you can look at him and say, "Hey, this guy's done it," and he can give you advice. Like, there's not a lot of replacement for that. I think it's a big thing. So Boston should feel empowered, and I think maybe they got a shot this year.
Yeah, I mean, God help us if it's Boston and New York and then Boston. Goodness. I don't think I'm emotionally ready for that yet. I mean, we'll do this again at the end of spring training where we'll give our predictions again once we have a better grasp. But, Boston made, I think, enough moves to at least boost themselves into a bona fide playoff contender, if not more. And then, obviously, I didn't spend too much time with the Dodgers because I think the offseason speaks for itself. But to kind of go back to your point, though, I mean, we've been talking for a while now about winners on your team. And for the Orioles, as far as that lineup goes, I mean, there's no veteran winners. That's what I want. I want tough outs that are also experienced winners. And, I mean, it doesn't have to be Alex Bregman. But it needs, like when they had, who's the outfielder they had a couple years ago? The switch hitter from New York that we signed. So I'm drawing a blank on his name. Played center field in the playoffs for us.
Aaron Hicks.
Aaron Hicks, a winner. He was on a winning team for a long time. Just that little spark alone. Now, some of these Oriole players are starting to be winners on their own, but they're not winning anything in the postseason. So tough outs and winners, to me, do a ton for the clubhouse. And, I mean, I guess we can roll right into the Orioles talk that we were talking about as far as spring training is about to kick off here, Michael.
Sure. Let me say one thing about the Mets because I know I talked about them, and I wanted to kind of just follow up on that. I mean, the Juan Soto deal, probably the biggest deal of the offseason, right? So to put him in the middle of that lineup, they re-signed Alonso. You have Jose Siri, who was in Tampa. I think they have a really nice lineup, which is really going to set the tone for the team this year. Starting pitching, they kind of have a hodgepodge. Manaya and Clay Holmes could be a starter. You got, what's his name? Peterson. Is it? So they have some good starting pitching. I don't think they have a stud, but they should be in every series. They have a tough division with Philly and Atlanta. That could be the one thing that holds them back, I think, if they don't make it. But you know what? It's way too early. That's why I gave it a shot.
Right. I mean, but to your point, they have just on paper, I'd say they have the third best rotation in that division. Like Phillies is definitely the top.
Oh yeah.
And Atlanta always solid, but I mean, I've been a big fan. I'll say it again, of balk pitching, but they didn't even do that. They're taking. I see them make all those teams that you have already mentioned are teams that are not afraid to make moves towards the deadline. Whether it's Boston, New York, the other New York, LA, they will make moves to solidify their rosters. So I do see that happening because not everybody stays healthy, as we know here in Baltimore, unfortunately, in the rotation. So, yeah, I do like the Mets a lot. I think they did enough to put themselves as one of the favorites, at least to make it to the playoffs, and then you never know what happens. But as we were saying, you ready to talk a little spring training, Baltimore Orioles?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. So pitchers and catchers started funneling in a little bit there down in Sarasota. It's very exciting. Some of the early reports, the number one thing that sticks out to me is that everyone is saying that Jackson Holliday looks absolutely ripped. He gained, I think they said 12 pounds of muscle. He's over 200 pounds now. He already has elite speed. As one of the fast. They said he's actually probably the fastest guy in the team. And the other, just side note, I don't know if you know this. Do you know Westberg has elite speed as far as the ratings go? It's well over a 90 in there. Oh yeah.
Really? When I watch him run, I don't think elite speed, but I guess maybe long strides. Remember Nolan Reimold? He was a guy who I never thought looked like super fast, but he just had those strides. So maybe Westy's got super secret strides.
Yeah, right. But I mean, just piggybacking on the Holiday thing, that's actually one of my biggest storylines for the whole spring is Jackson Holliday. And I find it very, very hard to believe that he is not going to take a giant leap forward. Just knowing the mentality of his father, the bloodlines that he has, the fact that he catapulted up his junior and senior year of high school to be one of the top prospects in all of baseball for the draft. I find it very hard to believe that he has not been working almost every waking moment to try to get better. So to me, that's very intriguing. I'm very excited to see how that pans out. Which one of the things you're paying attention to?
Well, just to chime in on what you're saying with Jackson Holliday, I mean, how old is Jackson Holliday? I mean, he's 20, 21 years old. I mean, I don't remember, being like a grown man necessarily at that age.
I know what you were doing when you were 21 years old.
So with that being said, he's still growing into his body. If he wanted to learn a way to get to 200 pounds, I could have given him plenty of different ways to do that. But I heard ground beef was his secret when they were talking to him. When I was listening to Connor's podcast, the Orioles Locked On podcast. But I think he is.
Alert.
Yeah, he is a guy. If he can perform to his capabilities, it just takes his team to a different level, right? And by that, I mean, can he hit 15 to 20 home runs, and can he get on base 35% of the time? Man, what that would do for this lineup is just, it would grow in leaps and bounds just to have that guy on base. And then you could bat him, instead of batting him in 7, 8, or 9, if you could bat him in 1 or 2, what a difference that does for the Orioles lineup. You can bat maybe Seti down low at 9 and turn the lineup over with that speed. Whew, that's kind of scary. But anyway, my first storyline to watch is who's going to be the last position player the Orioles take. So thinking about if you look at the roster the way it's comprised right now, I think Adley and Gary Sanchez are catchers. You've got Malney at first base. You've got Holiday at second, Gunnar at short, Westy at third. Urias is your utility guy on the infield. And with Mateo being out for the foreseeable future, I think that's it for the infield. O'Hearn obviously can play first and DH. So that's the only other infield guy. Unless I'll get to this in a second, Mayo can find a way onto the infield. Outfield, Cowser, I think, is a lock. Mullins, O'Neill is a lock. And then Kjerstad, especially the way Mike Elias talked about him the other day, he seems to be, regardless of whatever he does this spring, willing to give him a roster spot and give him a chance to shine. He's 26 years old as a prospect. It's his time to either, get in there and do the thing, or just we need to find something else to do with him. So he's got to show it at the major league level. And so that leaves, if you do 13 and 13 with the pitchers and the field players, 26 roster spots, that leaves one spot for that fifth outfielder or additional infield spot. So here are the possibilities, Jay, and we'll talk about these a little bit. You have Ramon Laureano, who they just signed for $4 million. Really good against lefty pitchers as a righty bat. He doesn't have any options, so you can't send him back down again. So that works in his favor to make the roster. Dylan Carlson, they signed the week before, right? Similar player, maybe a little bit higher upside, a little younger, similar tools, but a bounce back candidate. Kobe Mayo, who it's just hard to find a place for him positionally in their current lineup, with Mountcastle being at first base and O'Hearn being his backup possibly. And then you have Westberg at third base every day, and Urias can plug in there. So it's like, unless you make a crazy cut like a Urias or O'Hearn, which isn't outside the realm of possibility, Mayo doesn't have a spot right now. Now, if he rakes all spring training long, I can't see them not giving him an opportunity potentially. But that's not usually how the Orioles operate, honestly. They usually just let them sit there and then bring them up when one of those guys get hurt or just slump, and then they bring them up then. And then there's a couple other guys. Emmanuel Rivera they have from last year. They have him in the minors. And then Daz Cameron they just signed recently, who's more of a project. So if you're asking me who that last spot would go to, right now I'd have to say Ramon Laureano, just because of the no options and the money they spent on him. But I think that could change depending on an injury. That could change depending on production level from Laureano, with those other pieces in the minors just breathing down his neck. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, it's when I was thinking of everyone on this list, the one guy before the Laureano signing was Dylan Carlson. However, he's got options. So I do believe they could plop him down there. So I do not think he'll make the roster. I do think it will be Laureano. I think he hits the hell out of left-handed pitching, and that's very important. That, as you could see, and we talked about this before, that was one of the main things they did this offseason. Make sure you bring in guys that can hit the crap out of left-handed pitching, and they did that. So, no, I think he makes it, like you said, barring any injuries, barring any deals that they swing. I do think that O'Hearn makes this roster. I just think he comes off the bench. Like he did 2 years ago. And then he's, if you want to use the term professional hitter, he could be one of those guys that could, if he needed to play another day, but he didn't play for 2 days before that, he'd be okay with it. Of course he wants to be out there all the time, but I think him coming off the bench is probably the role you're going to see. I think the Kjerstad move is actually coming from upstairs more than anything. I don't know if it is going to be from Brennan Hyde, where they're like, this guy's on the roster. As long as he doesn't flounder in spring training, I think he's going to be on the roster. I mean, he was one of their best hitters starting off in the summer, right before he got hit in the head by Clay Holmes. Once that happened, but I cut myself off here for a second. The one thing that we haven't really mentioned is concussions linger. And they could, depending on how bad they are, I mean, this could be something that sticks with him. Hopefully it doesn't.
Yeah.
But if you remember the Twins first baseman, Morneau, for years, he had that one or two concussions, and he was never the same. And he was like an MVP candidate. So when you talk about that with these guys, I mean, they're so young too. I mean, what you'd say, 25, 26 is still super young. And I do think he gets a fair shot at this. I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of room, I think, because you can DH him, if you need to. And then you match him up against right-handers versus lefties.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I mean, that might be his eventual role. It wouldn't be a DH role. They've tried to find a position for him, and he did okay in the outfield last year. It just wasn't a thing of beauty per se. He made most of the plays, but you could tell he wasn't super comfortable. Now, I'm not saying he hasn't worked his rear end off this offseason. I don't know what he did this offseason, but if he does, maybe he comes in a little bit smoother. But eventually, obviously, his hit tool is so strong. They're just trying to find a way to get him in the lineup. So like you said, having the flexibility of a DH is really important. And O'Hearn, I love him, like you're saying. Great pinch hit guy. Austin Hayes did a little bit of that last year. He looked good off the bench. Like, those guys sometimes play better in those roles. I think he was exposed when Mountie got hurt last year a little bit. He wasn't as consistent at the plate. They found some holes in his swing. But he uses the whole field as a hitter, which is what you're looking for as somebody coming off the bench. Just puts the ball in play. He's not striking out a ton. And so to keep him in that role would be really important.
Yeah. No, I would agree 100%. Do you want to give your next one so I don't steal it? Because I have potentially two if I need to.
You are known to cut yourself off. Just be careful. And I don't want you to cut yourself off so much that it's just me here, because that would be bad. So I would say
dad bods and crab cakes, not dad jokes and crab cakes. Come on there.
Not dead bods and crab cakes.
Right.
So we're going to go, I'm going to go bullpen. So I have a couple bullpen questions, and I know it's probably cheating to do a couple in one, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's our podcast and we can do what we want. Right. So to me, the whole overall question is bullpen, 8 bullpen arms. I think we're set with Bautista as long as he's healthy. Cano, you got Dominguez, Kittredge. They're all right-handed pitchers, right? And then lefty-wise, you have Perez and Soto. I think they're both making the roster. And right. If Al doesn't make it as a starter, he'll definitely be a long reliever unless barring some meltdown. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 pitchers. You need one more in the bullpen. So again, the question is, which is your last bullpen arm? And to me, the big question mark is going to be Cade Povich and Chase McDermott. Do either of those have the opportunity? Because they'll need to find a spot for them either as a pitcher in AAA, as a starter. It depends on what the organization feels like they're going to be. Or if they think one of them just can be a really strong reliever. To me, Povich is the biggest opportunity there because he's left-handed. And I think we're very unbalanced towards right-handed pitching in the bullpen. He might have an opportunity there if he doesn't catch on as a starter to latch on as one of the last bullpen arm on the team. And then, the nice thing, you have Keegan Aiken, who's an option. He early in his career looked like he was kind of susceptible to the home run ball, but really has pitched better over the last couple of years. And then you have a bunch of righties. They just took a flyer on Ronci Contreras. Matt Bowman's kind of a journeyman, been around a while. Selby had a really good year with Kansas City and then came over here last year and did really well. And then Ward. And then, so you have like 6, 7 options. Where do you think they go, Jason?
I actually have one. So I think before I give you the name of the guy, I think that Povich starts the year in AAA. I don't think they want him doing anything except being starting pitcher. So I think he starts down there unless there's an injury and he's required to be up here because they need the help. I think he starts in AAA. Now McDermott, just to touch on that, I don't know if you saw, he was actually he's dealing with a lat injury, so they're shutting him down for, it looks like, the next up to 14 days or so. So him getting that slow start could. Now I just got a notification before we started that he says he's going to be back sooner rather than later, but you never know how that goes, The one guy that I do think is very intriguing is a guy that they like a lot, and that's as a lefty, is Luis Gonzalez. He's another guy, and he's on their 40-man, so they don't have to get rid of anyone to promote him. So to me, he's one of my dark horse guys to make that bullpen. Now, he is a lefty, so I will say, though, I don't think Albert Suarez is on this team when it comes to Baltimore. I think it might be a late trade to get something out of it. What do they say in fantasy? Like when you play fantasy sports, you're fading a player. Kind of fading Big Al. Towards the end of the year, he kind of struggled as far as a lot of doing a lot that he did earlier in the year. He couldn't replicate later in the year. Now, he did have a couple big starts towards the end of the year, but overall, he started fading down the end. And I just have a feeling that what we got last year was great. I just don't think he's going to replicate it. So I do think that they find a way to move on from him if they can. Otherwise, they'll try him out in the bullpen.
So what was your answer to that question then? Who's the guy? Is it Gonzalez?
Gonzalez would be one that would take his spot, and the Keegan Aiken obviously locked in. Zeno Perez, Kittredge, Felix, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Soto. Who else am I missing? That's
Cano. Yeah.
And then Cano, obviously. I mean, that would, if everything goes that way, and then maybe there's somebody we're not thinking of that pops up, like a Suarez last year.
Yeah, I would say for me, I went through all that stuff and never gave you my answer, but Keegan Aiken was the guy that I had highlighted. I think they just go with the guy who has been there before and, is a lefty pitcher. I think that's a profile they're looking for. He's done it at the major league level. And then you can always promote somebody if need be at some point. I think they just go with the easy choice there probably. But that's a good point about Gonzalez. I like that.
Yeah. They were real high on him last year as well. My other one is, this is actually one I thought you were going to take, is Felix. And just how healthy is Felix? I don't think either one of us think he's going to go out there and pitch. I know he's not going out there pitching back-to-back days, at least early on in the year. He's not going to get 2 innings a game, I don't think. They're going to baby him, and they should, to the best that he is. I'm just curious to what he looks like once spring training ramps up a little bit, and because that was everyone's kind of putting all the eggs in the Batista basket, and whenever you come off an injury like that, it's always tough to just say, nope, he's going to go back to the old Felix. I don't know if he will. So that's the other storyline that I am most intrigued to follow, that in Jackson. And just to highlight your two were the bullpen, and what was the other one?
Just the bullpen and who makes the last roster spot, position player wise. And just to touch on Felix, it's like I think they have faith he's going to be ready. But I don't think he gets all the saves at the beginning of the year. I don't think he's going back to back to start the season. I think they're going to use Soto. They're going to use Dominguez. They're going to match up a little bit if they need to at the end of a game, because the value of Felix in the long haul is way more important than getting him lots of save opportunities quickly. So I wish we would have gone out and maybe gotten somebody who's done it a little more consistently to take that pressure off of the bullpen to start the season. But those guys will hold down the fort, I guess, until we're sure Felix is ready to go. like he was last year. Hopefully he works his way up to being able to do a 4-out save once in a while. He did that 9 or 10 times previous year. So hopefully that's where we get to with Felix. But in the meantime, we'll have what we had last year, minus our boy Kimbrel and the giant wing.
Oh, man. I'll tell you, though, the one thing with the Orioles over the last couple of years, playing so many close games, and now I don't have the numbers on how many extra inning games they've played over the last couple of years, but one of the things when you get to extra innings and you put that runner on second base, what really hurt us and put us in a predicament is we didn't have guys besides Kimbrel, and when he was shaky, we weren't even pitching him. They could really miss bats late in the game. Cano's great, but he's a ground ball pitcher. Like when you get a guy on second base, you need to miss bats. You have to strike guys out. Felix is going to do that. Now, if he's only pitching 1 inning, now you have Sir Anthony Dominguez who can do that. And you have Kittredge who can do that. So I think they're actually thinking, okay, we play close games. How can we get guys out late in games when guys are in scoring position less than 2 outs? So to me, by designing your bullpen, and Cianel usually misses bats. He had a tough time finding the strike zone at the end of the year. But guys like that, I mean, is what I'm noticing they're loading up on that bullpen to try to do. At least I think so.
Yeah. The Orioles were 5-4 in extra innings last year.
Yep.
Just
piggybacking. If a couple of those games go the other way, you win the division.
Sure.
It's like, it's just tough. Like, because those are the things, like when you get deep in those games, you need to have guys that can strike a guy out if you need to. So what are your expectations for these guys? Let's just say spring training's over tomorrow. We're all done. You only have the information you got right now, but what's your expectations for the 2025 Birds?
So it's interesting as we've profiled the AL East a little bit rotation wise in the last episode. The Orioles fall middle of the pack rotation wise. So I need to see these hitters in year 2 and 3 just step up and become the superstars they were meant to be. And if that happens, I see them as a division champ. If that doesn't happen, I think we're strong enough to be a wild card team. If you're looking all the way down the road toward the end of the season, I do think this is a playoff caliber team. If pitching is suspect and we get off to a really, really bad start, I'll be curious to see how Mike Elias handles that. If we muddle around middle of the pack, I think he does make a trade for a pitcher in the midseason. And if we're able to pitch well, he may or may not make a trade or just wait for Wells and Bradish and one of those guys to come. And it's like adding somebody without having to make a trade here at the end of the season. I am curious about Ryan Mountcastle and what he does this year with the wall moved. I don't know. Is every offseason are we going to move a different wall and get a different type of hitter? Or is that going to be a new thing with the Orioles? Or just curious. A few years ago, obviously, they moved the wall back because we couldn't get pitchers here, right? So now we're moving the wall back in a little bit, correcting, they said. I'm curious to how that hurts or helps us. I think it's going to help some of our righty hitters, and they made a concerted effort to get those guys. But also, divisional-wise, there's some strong righty hitters in our division. So is that a wash? How does that work out? Lots of different storylines. But, again, I see us at least a wild card team, and potentially if everyone reaches max potential and everything breaks correctly, they could win the AL East. Yeah,
I think the wall helps a lot more than what everyone's saying, because everyone keeps focusing that it's helping the right-handed hitters. What about Adley and Gunnar and guys like that go oppo? And then even Jackson Holiday hit one last year. I'll never forget it. It was foul that must have gone like 390 some feet on a bomb. These guys can go the other way. So I think it helps everybody. And the fact that they did not go out and spend money on the offense. They went out and they replaced Santander. Then they got Laureano to hit against best left-handed hitting. Pardon me. So the fact they didn't invest in a lot of guys makes me think that they don't want to block some of these young guys and that they're ready to kind of let them see what they have. But I also think that they're convinced that these guys are going to work out, because otherwise I think they would have pulled the trigger on a trade to bring a pitcher in. You know, I think they're ready to let Kerstead play. Obviously you saw Westberg and Gunnar. You have Adley and Jackson Holiday, Cowser.
Yeah. What do the kids say today? Let them cook. Let them cook. Let them cook, Jason.
Yeah, no, I am very intrigued. I'm the one that keeps preaching offense and how they need to make this and that, but I'm intrigued.
Let them eat.
Anything else you want to say about the Orioles?
Go Birds.
Go Birds. Okay, so look at this. You see this guy? Yeah, see. What's this?
Is that a turtle?
Yeah, what's his name? Testudo?
Testudo.
Testudo. So the Terps today, the Maryland basketball Terps on the men's side, they won 101 to what I write down to 75 over the Iowa Hawkeyes. So take that, Colin Motterman. So the Terps, again, 2 big wins this week. And they went earlier in the week, they went into Nebraska and won. A very tough place to play. Maybe not they're a tournament team as of right now, as far as predictions go, but Nebraska, that is. So going into Nebraska, winning a tough game. It's always tough on the road in the Big Ten. And then today taking care of home court advantage by beating up Iowa. What do you see so far with these young Terps?
Yeah. We talked about, do they have the capability to make a long run in the NCAA tournament? I think I looked at the bracketology Lenardi puts out. I think they were around the 6th seed the last time I looked.
That's what I saw.
So in decent position with the opportunity to put yourself in even better position. They have a decent schedule coming up. They have USC, I think, at home. They have Michigan State at home. So they have a little run of home games here. They still have Michigan on their schedule, obviously on the road, which is a tough place to play. But the capability to maybe go 5-1, 4-2 here on the way out, maybe get into the 5 range. Your top 25 team, you should be somewhere between 5 and 6 seed, right? Somewhere in there at the worst, unless they really fall on their face. They're playing well. Their starters are phenomenal. I think they lead the NCAA in starter points. So you had, I think, 2 double-doubles tonight. I think Juju and Derek Queen both had a double-double this evening. Gillespie can go off at any time. He had 20-something tonight, and that guy's a bucket. I love watching him play. He just can get what he wants most of the time. He gets his shot, whether he makes it or not. Obviously, if he's on fire, he's making it. If he's not, he's not. But he gets to the places on the court and does great things for this team. He's the floor general. You have the ability to shoot with Selton Miguel. Rodney Rice has the ability to slash and score, also hit the 3-point. They really did a great job in the transfer portal this year. I was super impressed with what Kevin Willer was able to do, and to put this lineup with such a versatile lineup together starter-wise is super exciting to watch. I don't think we've had a lineup like this since the COVID year, where they were really poised to make a run in the NCAA tournament, and then the whole thing got canceled. So it's super exciting as a Terps fan to see that. Caveat would be I'm concerned about the bench. I know that we talked a little earlier off air about bench points, how important are they, or you shorten your bench obviously as the season goes along. But with that being said, they really haven't gotten a ton from their bench during the last stretch of Big Ten play. They haven't really needed it. That wears out your starters during the season, I think, a little bit. So if they were to falter, I think their bench could be to blame. Think about an opportunity, maybe early on, especially in his career, Juju got in foul trouble all the time. So if Juju gets in foul trouble, and now you're asking Queen to do a little more, and then you need to bring in Geronimo with his lost tooth, he needs to come in off the bench. And so you're looking at guys who haven't had a ton of experience this year. Geronimo is a seasoned veteran; he's been around, but you'll need those guys to step up big time if we get in foul trouble, because Queen does a lot, but he doesn't like to get all the way down inside like Juju does. He likes to kind of hang out at the high post and do some things there. So especially scares me if Juju gets in foul trouble.
Yeah, I mean, Queen, as good as he is protected by having someone like Juju. It's by having two bigs like that, you can have one that kind of comes out a little bit more than getting down in there. But, I mean, the other night he had against not the last game, the game before he had 29 points and another double. I think he's had three straight double-doubles now, maybe even four. But he is going to be – when you get to the NCAA tournament, and we'll get that in a minute, we're going to do something where Mike is going to play devil's advocate. Mike's going to say that this is why the Terps won't make a long run. And I'm going to say I think they're going to make a long run, but we both feel that they have the possibilities of making a deep run. But we're going to play devil's advocate in a second. But just to finish my thought, when you make it to the NCAA tournament, guard play and big play are so important. And all the veterans, like everyone but McQueen, out of the two guards, Rice, Gillespie, and then out of Reese and Queen, there's only one young guy in there. He's a freshman. All the other guys are seniors and juniors. So to have the experience there and to have great guard play and great inside play, I mean, that's how you win in the NCAA tournament. And one of the biggest stats too, I mean, they're top 20. I believe they're number 13 going into today. They were number 13 in offensive efficiency and number 15 in defensive efficiency. When you're top 20 in both of those, that's a really good stat to focus on when you go into the tournament. So John sent us, our other co-host John sent us a message the other day saying, do we think they're going to win the Big Ten tournament? And I said, I hope not, because I don't really want them to make a deep run in the Big Ten tournament because it's exhausting. Like, that is one of the toughest tournaments before you get into the toughest tournament. So to me, keep playing the way you're playing, get that double bye, then maybe make it to the semis, and whatever happens, happens. Like, of course, I'll cheer for them, but I'm fine with it if they have an early exit in the Big Ten tournament. I'd rather be rested and ready to go. So
absolutely.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just I was agreeing. The Big Ten tournament's just a gauntlet.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and besides the SEC, I think the Big Ten and the SEC are the two best conferences right now. Two of the best as far as ranked teams, and because doesn't the SEC have the number 1 and number 2 team in the country? They have like Auburn and
they just played. Auburn just beat Alabama, I believe, this weekend.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that was quite a game.
Yeah, I mean,
so real quick, Jason, we put out this question to our Facebook page. Does Maryland have the capability to make a long run in the NCAA tournament? The way we phrased it was, how far do you think they'll go? Do you think they have the ability, obviously, number one, to make the tournament, and then once they get there, are they like a one and done or a quick out on the first weekend? Are they a Sweet 16 team? Do they have the capability to make it to an Elite Eight or a Final Four or even further? We had, I think, we had 60%, an overwhelming percentage of our listeners said that they're going to be a first weekend exit. So I think it's maybe recent history bias or a little bit of, hey, we've seen too much of this and we don't believe it yet. But clearly our listeners have some concerns. And for me, playing devil's advocate, I think the concerns lie in what I spoke to earlier is the foul trouble and what happens if the bigs get in foul trouble and then we have a cold shooting night because how shooting goes. Do we rely on perimeter shooting or are we capable of slashing, but do we then make the switch and do what we need to? I'd say Kevin Willard has some things to prove as a coach. I think he's done a really nice job of recruiting. In-game adjustments has been better this year than he had been previously. Can he continue that trend as they play tougher and tougher opponents? And the last one that I think about playing devil's advocate is just their road record. I think they're 3-5 in the Big Ten on the road. It's really hard to win in the Big Ten on the road. I understand that. But they don't have a great history of playing on the road over the last few seasons. So hopefully they've overcome that. I know that they've been pretty good in their last few road games, but they have to buck that trend. And I know it's neutral site come tournament time, but they have to buck that trend to make a run.
Yeah, no, I was one of the ones on there. I voted that I think they're going to make it to the Elite Eight. I think that, unfortunately, though, like where they're sitting right now as a 6 or a 7 seed is a much tougher road than if you're a 4 seed or maybe even a 5 seed. And if they do what I think they could do and make it to the semis in the Big Ten tournament and keep winning the way they are, maybe have 1 or 2 losses at the end of the year, that 4 seed is probably where they'll end up if that's the recipe. Their 5 can match up against any 5 in the country. And to me, that is why I'm so high on this team. I do think that when you play in the Big Ten, it reminds me a lot of the AFC North in football, where it's like the Cleveland Browns could have 2 wins, and then they could knock off the Ravens who were leading in the division. Because you see each other so much and you play each other so much that you learn each other's tendencies. These coaches are really good, and they have these guys ready to play. So I don't take a lot out of the season. I know you were upset that they dropped that one to Ohio State. But anytime you can win as a 17, 18, 19-year-old on the road while you're trying to keep school on your mind and everything, to me, there's a lot for them to juggle. So I give any road win super credit. So I think that if they put it all together and keep playing the way they are, get the ball to bounce their way, that they're an elite team, Elite Eight team, very easily. But keep voting. Vote on our Facebook page. Let us know what y'all think. And that is Dad Bods, Crab Cakes, and Sports. All right, Mike, what else are we talking about here? What do we have next? I can't find my shirt.
I think we're running out of time. I think we're gonna have to wrap it up here, my friend. I think
man.
when we start talking about sports, man, we could talk for hours and hours and hours.
I know. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we really enjoy this, and we're very glad that you all are very, very appreciative of everyone joining our Facebook page, downloading on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all your favorite podcasts. Help us keep building this. And again, please send us an email to dadbots and crab cake. What is it? Yeah, dadbots, crab cakes,
and sports at gmail.com.
I wanted to make it short. You guys wanted to make it long. It's very hard.
You want to be like DD, BB, DBS. I'm like, no one's going to know what that is.
That was John. All right. I think I got to do a read here somewhere in here.
Yeah, you got to wrap us up to tell everybody where they can find us, Jason.
Again, you download on your favorite podcast, whether you like Apple, Spotify, Amazon. We are going to start doing some live on YouTube, but right now, this is where you can find us. Check out our Facebook page for any new news. When are we? Sometime later this week, we'll put out another show. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. Some midweek, I think Wednesday or so.
Very cool. All right. So this little read that you guys got me doing, let's see. Blah, blah, blah. This is good radio, let me tell you. All right. We did that. And then follow us on Yeah, you guys can get us on Instagram as well at dadbods_crabcakes_sports on Instagram. Wow. Okay. Any questions, topics you want? Again, just reach out to us, send us an email. Until next time, keep rocking those dad bods, keep eating those crab cakes, and never miss the game. For Michael Frisky, I'm Jason Weisbecker, and you guys have a great evening.
Take care.